The Oregon Ducks cap off an unbelievable 13-0 season, their first year in the Big Ten, and they walk right in and claim the Big Ten championship. They will be the number one seed in the college football playoff after an absolutely fantastic game in Indianapolis.
From Pasadena to Piscataway, College Park to the Coliseum, Seattle to State College, Columbus to Camp Randall, the Zoo to the Rock, and everywhere in between. This is where Big Ten fans gather to talk America's premier national conference with your host, Big Ten Ted. All Big Ten, all year long. This is Big Nation.
What an instant classic of a football game. Maybe, just maybe, the best Big Ten championship game of all time. Offenses went up and down the field. Key plays in key situations. Big plays, big players making big plays in key situations. It's maybe everything you could ask for from a college football game. But of course, what are we going to talk about? The winner. Oregon comes into the Big Ten in year number one and accomplishes something that no team has done in the Big Ten since 2015. The 2015 Michigan State Spartans was the last team before this Oregon Ducks squad to beat the Michigan Wolverines, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the Penn State Nittany Lions in the same season. And boy, just like this game, the Oregon Ducks were fun to watch all year long. All right, let's get in and let's start to break the game specifically down in this one. And when we break things down, maybe we start first with down defenses. I think it was great offenses, though, as well in this football game for both the Oregon Ducks and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Like, you look at the defensive performances, there is certainly a talking point for both the Penn State fan base and the Oregon fan base to say, yeah, that was certainly not our best defensive performance of the year. But I think on the flip side, I thought these offenses really came to play. Look, we knew what Oregon was, of course, from an offensive standpoint. We knew that they were a very explosive team, and Penn State would certainly have to play their A game to be able to keep the Ducks in check into this one. But I was impressed with the way Penn State played offensively in this game. I thought that this was Penn State's best offensive performance of the 2024 season. I thought Andy Kotelnicki had a very specific game plan, and he executed most of it really, really well in this particular game against the Oregon Ducks. Let's talk about some defensive lines, because that was the big, when I talked in my preview, I talked a lot about these defensive lines, and they were really good defensive lines coming into this game. I thought both offensive lines played pretty well in this particular game. There's no doubt about it. Neither defensive line got a ton of pressure. Now, I'm not going to blame it on certainly poor performances, because I don't think these were poor performances by both defensive lines. I think there's credit to go to the offensive lines and to the quarterbacks. We knew Dillon Gabriel had some scoot in him, quarterback, of course, for the Oregon Ducks, but Drew Aller did a really good job keeping plays alive, evading the pressure. I think both offensive coordinators knew what they were dealing with from a pass rush perspective, from a defensive line and pressure perspective. You know, Oregon was already a team that gets rid of the football quickly. I think Penn State, what they did in the run game really certainly helped to slow down the pass rush for Oregon. I will certainly get to that in a minute, but both offensive lines, specifically Penn State, I thought they played a really good game on the offensive line. Nolan Rucci at tackle coming in for Anthony Donkow, I thought played a very good game as well. He did a good job manning up Mateo Uiagalelei on a lot of specific plays there towards the edge, certainly as well. But both offenses certainly came ready to play with a really good game plan in Indianapolis. And you got to credit both of these football teams. The way I see it right now, I think these are, we knew, and if you've been watching this channel, you know I think that Oregon, right, is certainly sitting up here as far as the Big Ten. They are the champions, and I think they're sitting up here, and they're going to be the number one seed, and I think they are the national championship favorite right now. That's not news to anybody. But I look at Penn State in the way they played in this specific football game. If they play like that, if they run the football like that, more on that in just a minute, right? If offensively, we know what their defense can do. Like, Oregon's a good offense, right? Maybe the best offense that they will face the rest of the season. But if Penn State can play this type of game that they played in Indianapolis, this is a Nittany Lions team that if they have that nice road, which I think being the number 5 seed or being the number 6 seed, they could certainly have a comfortable road to the college football playoff semifinals. This is a team that can certainly make some noise if they continue to play like this that they did today. Let's talk about Tez Johnson, oh why don't we, the Big Ten championship game MVP. Here's the thing about Tez. He was hurt for a while, and you could kind of tell that Tez's absence was affecting Oregon's offense. When he comes back, they are just so much more explosive. They are so much more dynamic on the offensive side of the football. Like, what he can do from a slot perspective, I'm not sure if certainly anybody in the conference, I don't know if anybody else in college football can really help out their offense out of the slot the way that Tez Johnson certainly can. Look, Penn State could not cover him, right, with their slot corners. They could not match up with him. When Tez Johnson was able to get space, when Tez Johnson was able to get the football in his hands, when he was able to get separation, he had a lot more speed and a lot more explosiveness than anybody on the back end of that Penn State secondary. How about 11 catches, 181 yards, and a touchdown in this game for Tez Johnson over there? And here's one thing that I want to make sure I mention that Tez was able to do really good, and that Oregon, and specifically Dylan Gabriel, was able to do really, really good in this particular game. When Dylan Gabriel was able to move the pocket, get outside the pocket, he was able to scramble. Now the routes break down. Now that's where, and Dylan is so good at that improvisation when the pocket breaks down and he gets out of the pocket. And when you play as many college football games as he's played, right, you're going to know what to do in those situations. But he's so good at getting out of the pocket and keeping his eyes downfield. And Tez Johnson, with his quickness, with his agility, with his explosiveness, how he is able to get open and find the spots. He was so good in this game. When the pocket broke down, he was so good at finding the spots, finding separation. So when he did make the catch, he was able to make some explosive yardage as well, certainly after the play. So an Oregon Big Ten championship, of course, was propelled by Tez Johnson and this Oregon passing game certainly as well. I thought they ran the ball pretty well in this game. Look, I said this in the preview coming in, it was going to be tough, I think, to run the ball up the middle against this Penn State front. I thought the Ducks did a decent job at being able to run the football, but man, they just made plays. They made the few extra plays in this game that the Penn State Nittany Lions were not able to make. Let's talk. I want to make sure that I talk about this for Penn State because it relates certainly to the Oregon Ducks as well. Run, Lions, run, and boy, did they run the football today. Boy, did they run the football today. I said in my preview, I thought it would be a challenge for Penn State to run the football, but they needed to be able to run the football. They needed to be able to get to the perimeter. Andy Kotelnicki did a really good job in getting Katron Allen, getting Nick Singleton heavily involved in the run game, and most of all, getting them to that second level so that when they have that head of steam, they're able to get those big chunks, certainly in yardage. I talked about the Nittany Lion offensive line before. I thought Penn State played as good of a game as they've played all year long on the offensive line, specifically in run blocking, right? What did we say in the preview? Look at what Derek Harmon had been doing. Look what Jamari Caldwell had been doing. Look at what this linebacker group had been playing. Like there were some situations for Oregon when it did get to that second level for Penn State, they weren't the best at wrapping up. Now, when it comes to a tackling, when you're talking about tackling, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, not the easiest guys to certainly tackle out there in the open field. Andy Kotelnicki schemed up some really good concepts to get these guys out onto the perimeter to get those explosive runs, which is exactly what I lined out in the preview that Penn State needed to be able to do in this game. You know, the Nittany Lions just kept on running the ball and running the ball and running the ball right at the Oregon Ducks. So this is something. Now you look at Oregon, they're going to be that number 1 seed. They're going to have that bye right now. They're going to have to shore things up against them in the run defense, certainly right now. So we'll see if they're going to be able to do that. But this Penn State team might be as good of a rushing offense that they will see maybe outside of a team like Notre Dame, who's also really good at running the football. We'll see where the matchups certainly break where they may as well. I want to make sure I mention a couple of other things, but before I get out of here on this specific breakdown and this specific reaction, Oregon and the lateral passing game. I think we need to talk about that. Penn State did a really good job at tackling out on the perimeter. Right, Oregon and Will Stein, they called a lot of lateral passing plays, swing it out, whether it was to a running back, whether it was to receiver, right? Whoever it was to, they did a couple of concepts. And there was kind of when it got later in the game, it kind of got, for my taste at least, it got to be a little bit too much. Certainly at that point in time, Penn State did a great job tackling out there in space. That's why Oregon needed to get more north and south, and when Tez Johnson was able to separate in the middle of the field, that's where those catch and run situations were certainly be able to open up for the Oregon Ducks within this game as well. I think the big key and why this game ended up the way it did with an Oregon victory over Penn State, I think, was the early part of that third quarter. I think the way the Ducks came out early on in the second half, I think really helped them springboard to the rest of the game. But I want to say one last thing here. Penn State is maybe the most resilient football team I've seen in a long time, man. They got behind against USC. They had a tough game against Minnesota. Remember Bowling Green earlier on during the season. Man, they have been in a lot of precarious situations, but they have battled back and battled back and battled back. How about being behind 28-10 after the interception? I thought that was a point where Oregon could really take control of this game and the Ducks could really start running away with it. But man, it's just, we might get into this situation in the college football playoff where Penn State is sitting there and Penn State is down 10, 14, 17, maybe 20 or 21 points, but you can never count out these cardiac cats. You can never count out these Penn State Nittany Lions. Drew Aller has done a great job all season long at willing this team back. When their backs are against the wall, they always find a way to get it done. Big congrats to the Oregon Ducks winning the Big Ten championship in their very first year in the Big Ten Conference. All right, let's dive into some comments. I want to get to some comments here, but before we're going to dive a little bit more into the box score here as this day certainly goes on. Taylor E. chiming in. What a day of football. Indeed, it was a fantastic day of football. Speaking of the Oregon Ducks, how about former Oregon offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham taking care of business against Iowa State? Arizona State punches their ticket into the college football playoff. Man, what Kenny has done this season has been fantastic. He's been certainly great this season. They're over at ASU. They were dealing with sanctions, a bad year. I think they won 3 games last season. They were predicted to finish at the bottom of the Big 12. Yeah, former Oregon Ducks offensive coordinator, certainly doing a good job as well. Trojan Blade, my guy Gabe chiming in here. I'm not sure if he's totally in the loop of what my team are, but apparently he thinks USC is my team. Trojans finishing off with a 6-6 record. Bumble lead. The Ducks are sitting there at 13-0. Let's kind of take a look at some other points that I want to make sure that I work into here. How about Penn State? 292 yards on the ground in this game, almost 9 yards a carry. I said it in my monologue. Oregon was really good this season at stopping the run. Right, that we talk about those defensive tackles. I've talked ad nauseum about those linebackers, certainly in there as well. That's certainly something, and I talked about it once again in my monologue. Notre Dame, Penn State, those are two of the best rushing teams right now in all of college football. Ask the USC Trojans how good Notre Dame is at running the football right in that last game of the season. But man, this was they were able to get chunks. They were able to win the battle at the line of scrimmage, which is exactly what Penn State certainly needed to do. Deuce chiming in. Penn State's really good, but the Ducks got it done. This is the type of win that, I mean, there are certainly things to work on for Dan Lanning and the Ducks, right? And this is, I think, going to be it's a key win because they do get that bye. They're able to refocus. Now, we're going to get into the bracket as this stream goes along, and I'll pull it up on a screen capture here once I get through some of these comments. But right now, the 8-9 game is looking like Ohio State, and it's looking like Tennessee. Now, we know Ohio State has two really good running backs. Okay, that's something we certainly know, but we know their offensive line. Look how they did against Michigan. So we know Ohio State maybe at their peak. They certainly weren't at their peak when they were running the ball right at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant against Michigan. But we know that in other games this season, they have been able to run the football effectively. So, man, that would be quite the quarterfinal matchup between Oregon and Ohio State, certainly as well. And I want to look at this. Drew Aller and Dylan Gabriel. Man, these are two really good quarterbacks. Two really good quarterbacks in this game. 509 yards and 7 touchdowns they combined for in this game. I thought Drew played a really good game. I thought he did. And I just thought Penn State overall played a really good game, and they executed really well, whether it was in pass protection, run blocking, run game, throw game as well. I'll say this about Oregon's defense, though. I think Oregon did a much better job at shading their defense to Tyler Warren. Now, that opened things up. You had that crazy Harrison Wallace touchdown grab where Mateo is pulling on his jersey, and Drew makes a amazing throw for a touchdown there late in the game. But man, Drew is he's just a gamer. He's just a gamer, and he's been a gamer all year long. When plays, now I know he threw the interception, so he said, well, wait a minute, Ted, when plays need to be made, does he really make the play? Nico Reed made the play in that specific situation. And like I said during my monologue, Penn State just didn't make a few plays when they absolutely needed to make a lot of plays in this game. You know, I see a lot of Oregon fans certainly in the chat saying that, hey, this Penn State team is absolutely legit. Absolutely legit. And when I it's like what I said in my monologue. If Penn State continues to play this type of ball, but better, because here's the thing about Penn State, and here's the thing about Oregon. Oregon, you look at where Penn State lines up, even if they're the 6th seed. What I think we got, did Clemson win today? I think Clemson won today, so the 3 seed could be Boise State, right? So they could get a home game against the 11 seed, whoever that is, which I think would be Alabama. We'll get to the bracket here a little bit later on. But if they can get by that first round game, like the path is good for Penn State to certainly get to the semifinals in this game as well. Here's Hummus Hero, one of the longtime viewers here on this channel. He's a Buckeye. If Ohio State can win the 8-9 game, Oregon's next game will be against the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. Man, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We've got old Pac-12, maybe old Big Ten, even though they're both in the Big Ten, certainly right now as well. We're just getting through some comments here. Want to thank everybody for coming in here on the live stream. Of course, Oregon 45, Penn State 37, the final score in this game. And Michael he says, wow, Oregon gave up 292 yards rushing and found a way to win. They found a way to win. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Let's get to a comment here from Jared. Jared Carrick says, Ducks defense got exposed. Their defensive numbers have been a product of them playing mostly trash offenses this season. The only decent defenses have put up 30 plus on them. Okay, so let's break this one down a little bit. All right. And maybe we could pull up the Ducks schedule here in just a minute. But you look at Ohio State. That game, of course, went back and forth, and they put 31 points on them. You look at the graphic up there right now. Penn State put 37 points on them. And, you look at, it was early in the season. You look at what Ashton Genty and Boise State were certainly able to do. So there's a little bit, that point is, and then you kind of take a look at some of the other teams that they've played, the Illinois and the Wisconsins. What did they play? They played Maryland. They played Purdue. Kind of blanking on who else they played. But here's the thing. You just got to win the football game. And Oregon's offense has done enough to be able to win this football game as well. But I think I was a little surprised that Oregon was maybe not able to get the pressure that they've been able to get maybe in Washington. I forgot about the Washington game where they had 10 sacks, certainly as well. So maybe we're getting when Oregon faces a better offense, or I should say when they face a better offense, that their offense, the Ducks offense, needs to be able to do their part to be able to keep them up, certainly in this game as well. Let's get to an expanded box score here. I'll have to pull it up here as well, but I think I got it here. All right, let's get to it. Let's talk about team stats here for a minute. You look at the first downs, 28-25 in favor of Penn State. The efficiency on third down and fourth down was pretty similar kind of compared to both teams. But, man, how about that total yardage? That's kind of one thing about this game that I wasn't necessarily expecting. For these offense, Oregon's offense, I figured, considering what they've been able to do this season, they could certainly have a great offensive output. But for Penn State to put up 518 yards of total offense, that's an outcome I'm not sure I expected. So this bye week is going to be ultra important for the Oregon Ducks to be able to get things right on defense and to be able to keep going forward, certainly throughout this game. Let me get to the individual box score here for a minute. And of course it says no box score available. Well, isn't that just great? There it is. Nothing like the refresh button here. Drew Aller, 20 of 39, 226 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. How about the individual rushing performances? Katron Allen, you're looking at 14 for 124. You're looking at Nick Singleton, 10 for 105 in this game, certainly as well. Even I thought Drew Aller, you look at that stat line, 5 carries for 54 yards in this game, certainly. He made some big plays. Running the football. All right? Drew Aller got key first downs in key situations. Richard, it is a great day to be the Oregon Duck. 13-0, winning the Big Ten title. Welcome to the live stream here over here as well. So, but of course, you got to give credit to the Penn State Nittany Lions and how well they were able to run the football, certainly in this game. I look at Oregon running the football that's kind of, considering what Tez Johnson was able to do in the throw game and what the big plays that Dylan was able to make, kind of getting outside of the pocket, certainly as well. They ran the football. You look at it, and they ran it a lot. 43 carries for 183 yards in this game. And you look at the stat lines for both Jordan James and Noah Whittington in this game, 87 and 82 yards respectively. That's not completely out of the norm, right, for what Oregon has been doing really ever since Noah Whittington has gotten 100% and he's gotten fully healthy, and he's gone into thunder mode, right? Putting his shoulder down and just ramming people over. It's been really fun to watch him do that so far this season. But this was a good rushing performance. They stuck with it, and it certainly paid off into key situations as well. Big congratulations for those of you just coming in here to the live stream. Big congratulations to the Oregon Ducks coming in as that team out west, coming into the Big Ten in year number 1 and capturing a Big Ten championship in Boy, I'm thinking of the great Big Ten title games of all time that we've seen. Penn State was in one of them, where they were able to beat Wisconsin 38-31. That was in 2016. How about the year before? I talked about the 2015 Michigan State Spartans all the way at the top of my monologue, okay, as the last team before these Oregon Ducks to beat Ohio State, to beat Penn State, and to beat Michigan in the same exact season. But that 2015 Michigan State, Iowa, it was a low-scoring game, but that play at the goal line, of course, it was number 4 against number 5 that year. The winner was going to get into the 4-team college football playoff. I think it was, 16-13, I think was the final score. That was a great Big Ten championship game. You absolutely cannot forget about that one. Certainly a few years, boy, that's almost 10 years ago. That's almost 10 years ago, certainly right now. But this one, it just went back and forth and back and forth. You had Oregon getting out to that 18-point lead. Penn State came clawing back. It had a lot of great things. We're getting even more stuff in the comments, and I'm glad some of the Oregon fans out there are saying this, that Penn State they ain't no joke, because they're not. I know a lot of people kind of bag on Penn State a little bit because they're not the flashiest team in the world. They just put up 37 points in this game, but I was just about to say they don't put up the most points in the world, right? They might play some close games against teams that they should beat by more. See Bowling Green and see Minnesota, right? But this is just it's a really good team. Penn State this year is trying to prove that they're a great team. They're trying to go on that run, certainly right now as well. Let's take a look a little bit more. I want to talk about Penn State receiving. Tyler Warren, 7 catches, 84 yards in this game. Here's the thing. Let's break this down a little bit. You see it on the left side of your screen. Penn State receiving. I talked about Tyler Warren. Harrison Wallace had that big touchdown catch, but look at wide receivers in this game for the Penn State Nittany Lions. And this is something you talk about at the beginning where, hey, maybe both defenses playing the way they did. Maybe that wasn't expected in this game. But you look at a tight end in Warren. You look at a running back in Singleton, right? They combined for 11 of the 20 catches in this game. Harrison Wallace had 4 for 59 and that touchdown at the end. Other than that, look at Katron Allen had 3 catches. Other than that, Amari Evans had a catch. And, Khalil Dinkins is a tight end. So you had 2 wide receivers, if I'm looking at, 2 wide receivers catch passes, a combined 5 catches. That's kind of what we expected, right? I kind of expected, I said this on other shows that I was a guest on. I said, hey, maybe Oregon's going to dedicate extra resources towards the line of scrimmage because they feel like their corners are going to be good in man coverage. And I felt like, for the most part, that was key. Now, you saw what Tyler Warren was able to do in the first half. It looked like Tosh Lupoy and Dan Lanning certainly focused in on that matchup with covering Warren a little bit later in the game as well. And you kind of saw what happened as this game went on. Tyler Warren wasn't certainly getting as many targets. He had a lot more targets early on in this game as well. All right, we got a lot of comments coming in, but we'll get it there. Here we got a comment here from the Ocean Man 1984. Oregon turned it into a shootout. Look at Oregon. What do we know about Oregon? They're Tracktown, USA. The interior of that logo is Hayward Field, right? One of the best track facilities in the entire, let's call it as it is. It's probably the track facility at the Track and Field Blue Blood, right? But I kind of said that if this thing got into a track meet, that's exactly where Oregon wanted to live. You got to give a lot of credit to Penn State. They were able to get up and down. They were able to stay with Oregon in this type of track meet. They had the ball down by 1 possession and a chance to be able to tie the game in a track meet type of football game. Like, that gives me confidence that Penn State, and I promise, I know I've teased it a couple of times already, but we're going to pull up a bracket. We're going to pull up a bracket that is kind of a projected thing. I'll have to probably search for it. It's going to be great podcasting, I'm sure. But we'll get to that here in just a minute, and we'll kind of look at some hypothetical matchups because I think Penn State, whether they're the 5 or the 6, because now we're getting into an argument. Okay, Texas and Penn State for the 5 seed. Well, I mean, it's probably, if I'm not saying this is what I would do, but it's probably going to go Texas. I'd say Texas probably gets to number 5 because Texas was ranked ahead of Penn State, and they're trying to say, hey, we don't want the conference championships to cause a ton of movement. I guess is certainly what I want to say over there. But I wanted to make sure, but Amari Evans, 1 catch, 22 yards. That was that touchdown catch. And then Wallace, we talked about him certainly as well. Hell yeah. Here you go, Bert. I'll give you a hell yeah for the Kenyon Sadiq touchdown. How about 2 Kenyon Sadiq touchdowns? The first 3 touchdowns thrown by Dylan Gabriel in this game were to the tight ends. Remember, the first 2 went to Kenyon Sadiq, and then the second one went to Terrence Ferguson as well. That's when Oregon has gotten into the red zone, when they've gotten into that territory. The Ducks they look to their tight ends, and they've got really, really good tight ends. As well. Like Kenyon Sadiq, well, he's their second tight end. Patrick Herbert is kind of their third, certainly this season. But man, he's one of those players that I look to right now where I think he's going to come. I think there's going to be a player, and I think it's him, where you get into a playoff game and someone needs to make a play. I think he's going to be the one to certainly make that play. How about our guy, one of the OGs of the Big Ten TED community, Nebraska fan, going for Gold 85, says, very competitive and enjoyable game. I'm glad Penn State didn't look out of place. It makes the look. Yes, this is a great point. So great that I couldn't even finish reading it. This makes Penn State look great. This makes Penn State and the Big Ten look very good, right? When Ohio State kind of got knocked out, there were a lot of people, including myself, like I predicted Penn State to score 17, and they scored 37. A lot of people maybe had been begging at, like me. I'm like, hey, I don't think their wide receivers are going to be able to separate. I said, look, I'm going to take a lot of L's, right, as it pertains to what I thought before the game and now what happened after the game with the Penn State Nittany Lions. But here's kind of something that I want to add about this. Oregon can win a national championship. If Ohio State gets their in order, they can win a national championship. Like if Ryan Day doesn't play Michigan, he can win a national championship. The winner maybe of that Rose Bowl quarterfinal between Oregon and Ohio State win a national championship, right? So, and now Penn State. I'm not going to sit here and say now, hey, Penn State, they can win a national title. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I think they can. I'm not sure if they will. Maybe I should backtrack a little bit. What this game, I think, certainly tells me is if they play their best, if they play really well, if they play this type of game, I mentioned that in my monologue, if they play this type of game, they're going to be in the right spot. They're certainly going to be in the right spot. All right, let's get to some more comments, certainly, as well. We got Gabe using the transitive property. I'm not good at math. USC took Penn State to OT, therefore USC is good. Your record might tell a little bit of a different story, certainly, as well. Northwest Service Enterprises. This seems like a business account, but hey, we're here for it because we're doing business. We're doing business here. Those allegedly weak Pac-12 teams win the Big Ten. Yeah, that's something that I kind of took time this week and like, how would the Pac-12 have done if it were still the Pac-12, right? Oregon, I think, would have dominated the league, right? A lot like they did in the Big Ten in year one. They certainly would have won the league. Colorado was, a 9-3 team. Arizona State was good, certainly as well. But those two teams, Arizona State and Colorado, were nowhere near where Oregon was, certainly this season. Like Utah was down this year. Arizona was down this year. Cal was fine. Did they make a bowl game? I can't exactly remember. Stanford was not good this year. Washington State was a decent team. John Mateer was good at quarterback. For them, but you look at USC was average. Washington was average. It probably would have been an Oregon and then Arizona State, Colorado, and then a bunch of mid, right, in the conference. So yeah, just something I thought about. But yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be talking about Oregon. They're going to be talking about Arizona State, but kind of look at how the rest of those Pac-12 teams looked certainly this season as well. All right, we got to get in the Super Chats here. Super Chat from Going for Gold 85. Thank you for the $10. All right, let's get down. Let's do it. We're taking the Super Chat. This is the Super Chats take the show in a different direction. And going for gold 85, he gets it. All right, let's get down to CFP brass tacks. Texas loss makes them the 5 seed. I probably agree with that because Texas was ranked above Penn State before this weekend. So Penn State's a 6, so who would Penn State play? Then where does Notre Dame land? That sounds like a fantastic game. Hats off to both teams. I'm gonna try to multitask here because I gotta pull up a projected bracket, right? So we are going to we're gonna get me back on camera here. So let's figure this all out together. Let's figure this all out together and see exactly where this would stand right now. Let's see if we've got an updated CFP bracket. See if we can find something on the old Twitter sphere as well. All right. This was 8 minutes ago over there on Twitter. Because Clemson won. Okay, I think this is what we're working with. I think that we got a tweet here, and I think this will work. So I'm going to share my screen once again. So. All right, let's talk about it. This from, I don't know who this person is, but he's got a check mark. But anyway, a podcaster. Okay, so this is kind of what we're looking at right now. We've got Oregon as the number 1 seed, and I'm blocking. I can't really scroll here, but what I'm blocking SMU. I'm blocking SMU. So they got SMU as the number 12 team right now. Notre Dame is the number 5. Clemson would be in at the number 11 seed. So let's kind of get back to the question that Going for Gold 85 had right now. Let's pull it back on screen. They have Notre Dame as the number 5 seed, and this is a projected bracket. I just searched CFP bracket on Twitter, and this is what I came up with. So we can kind of argue this back and forth. Personally, I think Texas goes 5. I think, where does Notre Dame end up? This is a great question, certainly right now. If the committee and what they've said about conference championship games and you can't be punished. And here's the thing about Texas. Texas went to overtime and Penn State took Oregon to the wire. So I don't think you can really move those teams that much as of right now. That's kind of the way I certainly see it at this moment in time. We'll maybe get back to the playoff here in a minute, but I want to make sure I get to some more comments because I am very behind on comments, certainly as well. Oregon tight ends, of course, they had those touchdown catches. They were really good down there near the goal line, certainly in this one as well. Here's a comment from the Duck Knight. Pennsylvania State University is very good. Oregon is national champion. Like, this does not change, and it shouldn't. Or the way Oregon's defense played, that does not change my opinion on them being the best team in the country. I think they're the national championship favorite, certainly, obviously, right now as well. Let's see here. Yeah, getting a lot of people giving the old Pac-12 certainly some love with Oregon and Arizona State winning their respective conference championships here today. All right, let's get back to the bracket. Let's get back to the bracket right now. And let's talk about maybe where some Big Ten teams certainly stand right now. Now, once again, this is just a projected bracket that is sitting out there online. But Indiana, I feel probably pretty confident that they are the number 10 seed right now. It all depends on who the number 7 seed is certainly at this point in time right now. So I look at this for Indiana. What has Indiana had trouble with in some of these games later in the season? They haven't been the best at blocking up front on the offensive line. All right? They haven't been the best at blocking, certainly up front. Okay, we looked at what happened against Michigan, Ohio State. Some really good defensive line gave the Hoosiers trouble. Right here in this matchup, you have Penn State, and that would be another significant challenge for Indiana. Notre Dame is a possibility, right, at 7. I don't think Texas is a possibility, right? But Texas, you saw what they like. That's another good defense as well. I think no matter which way it slices, I think Indiana is going to have a pretty sizable challenge in week 1, in the first round of the college football playoff. I don't think Penn State's going to be at 7 like this bracket shows right now. Certainly as well. Here's a comment from Kevin. We are proud of the Nittany Lions. They played their heart out as well. I agree with Kevin. I think they're going to be a very dangerous team in the college football playoff right now. But let's get back to the bracket at this point in time. Let's see what else we got. So Penn State, I don't think they're going to drop all the way down to number 7 in the rankings. I mean, I guess, man, it depends what the committee thinks of Notre Dame. It all depends what the committee thinks of Notre Dame, certainly right now. But if they're the number 5 or if they're the number 6, so if they play a quarterfinal against Boise State or if they play a quarterfinal against Arizona State, I think that this is a situation where Penn State can certainly make a run, right? You look at Clemson, you look at a possibility of we'll see if they could be the number 5 seed. I'm not sure if they can be the number 5 seed right now, but if they can find a way to beat Clemson, say they are the number 6 seed, because this is not my projected bracket. If it were my projected bracket, I think the 5 seed would be Texas. I think the 6 seed would be Penn State, right? Because they were ranked ahead of Notre Dame. I think Penn State is sitting there at number 6, and I think Notre Dame is sitting there at number 7. So we're salivating over a in-state battle possibly between number 7 Notre Dame and number 10 Indiana at this point in time. But so that would put Penn State at number 6 if they're able to beat Clemson in the first round. Boise State, I mean, Boise State doesn't have much outside of Ashton Genty. That gets you to the semifinals. And that possibly gets you, if Penn State is the number 6 seed, to a game against Georgia. And you look at what Georgia is sitting at right now. They're a good defense, but there is a route. There is a route for Penn State to get really far in this playoff, folks. I think this performance makes me feel a lot better about the Penn State Nittany Lions going forward. All right, so maybe we're kind of jumping back and forth, certainly between some certain topics right now. Let's get back to some comments here. I want to thank everybody for coming in for the Big Ten Championship game post-game show. It has been months since I've done a live stream. So if it's a little bit choppy with jumping from topic to topic, I apologize, but we're certainly doing the best we can. Hummus Hero saying a Penn State-Indiana first-round matchup. Hey, I would love to see a Notre Dame-Indiana first-round matchup in this game, or in the college football playoff, as well. All right, let's get to a comment by Dean. How can you see 2-loss Ohio State behind 2-loss Penn State when they beat Penn State? This is something that I've been mulling as of late, but it all comes down to the committee saying we can't punish people for being in a conference championship game and dropping them lower. I think that's what this comes down to. But I'm curious to see, right, if Ohio State and Penn State are back-to-back in terms of seeding. Now, that would require, we talked about this bracket that I just showed. Penn State was the number 7 seed. Ohio State was the number 8 seed. If they're back-to-back in terms of seeding, how much does the head-to-head play? I think that's going to be something, we'll see if it gets talked about. But yeah, that's crazy. Ray comments, can Penn State beat Georgia? I think the answer is yes. I have not been impressed at all with Georgia's offense, and especially if they're going with a backup quarterback. And we'll see what the health of Carson Beck is. I just have not. I mean, they got a good defense. There's no doubt about it. They got a good defense. But Penn State moved the ball against a good Oregon defense. Right? And then you get to comparing the Oregon defense versus the Georgia defense. But I think Penn State can do a lot more. Maybe not a lot more, but they can do more offensively, I think, than the Georgia Bulldogs certainly can do. I pulled up that bracket, man. It's, a lot of people have their opinion about Penn State as having that ceiling where they're good, but they're not great, or they're not elite. They could have a draw where they could go to a national championship. It's possible. It is certainly not out of the question. Certainly not out of the question. I think this college football playoff is going to be utterly fantastic. Here from Angel Soto saying, go Ducks. I hope Penn State gets the 5 seed or the 6 seed. they don't deserve to fall too far. And yeah, that's the thing. When you play such a competitive game, and I think the same goes for Texas. Same maybe goes for SMU. I think SMU gets in over. I think you got to keep SMU in over Alabama, don't you? Don't you? I know Alabama beat Georgia, and there's going to be a lot of people on our least favorite television network. They're going to be saying, hey, Alabama beat the SEC champion. Yeah, but they also lost to who they lose to? They lost to Vanderbilt, who made it. I forgot what their record was. I think it was just maybe above 500. Who else did Alabama lose to? Did they lose to Ole Miss? I think they lost. I can't exactly remember. I'm not SEC Steve, but they don't have. They've lost against teams that aren't exactly 11-1. Let's just put it that way. All right, let's get to a little bit more comments here on this Big Ten championship game post-game show. The Oregon Ducks 45, the Penn State Nittany Lions 37. The final score when all is said and done in the Big Ten championship game. Penn State rushed for nearly 300 yards, but it wasn't quite enough over there. Tez Johnson lifting the Oregon Ducks to a Big Ten championship game. A lot of happy Ducks in the comments here today. John Smith saying Ohio State should be over Penn State. So he's saying Buckeyes over Nittany Lions. And where did this head-to-head, right, all come into things as well? Both Ohio State and Penn State played Oregon extremely well. Of course, Ohio State, it came down to Will Howard sliding at the buzzer on October 12th at Autzen Stadium. And then you look at this Big Ten championship game, how good Penn State was able to take the Oregon Ducks down to the wire as well. John Smith saying the Big Ten is the best league this year. I'll say this about, because there's a lot of talk there about about best conferences out there. It's somebody people like throwing around. How much does it matter? I don't know how much it really matters. I think it's just more of a fun conversation to have than anything. I think the top of the Big Ten for the second consecutive year, if you factor in current alignment, for the second consecutive year, the top of the Big Ten is better than the top of the SEC, right? You look at what Michigan and Washington did. I know Washington was in the Pac-12 at that point, but what they were able to do, beating, you had a future Big Ten team in Washington that beat a future SEC team in Texas to get to that point. And I think the bracket is in play to possibly have another all Big Ten championship game. I think the biggest obstacle right now sitting in that, it depends on, once again, I might come on live after tomorrow. We'll see what my schedule looks like tomorrow. I'll certainly be talking about it. Not sure if it'll be live or it'll be recorded, but I'll certainly be talking about what the bracket looks like and projected matchups and see how some Big Ten teams could possibly fare. But if the matchups break the way, I think the Big Ten, there's a good possibility we could see a Big Ten versus Big Ten national championship game as well. I think the biggest obstacles in their way right now, probably Georgia, probably Texas, and Notre Dame. I don't think I'm missing anybody. That's it. Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame. I think those are the biggest threats to Big Ten teams that aren't other Big Ten teams, certainly right now as well. Dean saying SMU must be in over Bama. I agree with that, especially with how competitive that game was down the stretch. I think SMU is going to be the 12th seed. I think you could see Notre Dame and SMU or Texas. I want to see, what I want to see? I want to see Texas and SMU. I want to see an old school Southwest Conference matchup in the first round. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see 5 Texas. I think we're going to see 12 SMU over there as well. We love you some Ducks. We've got some Big Ten love going on in the chat as well. Hummus Hero saying SMU should probably stay in. The committee will still be feeling pressure on both sides. The people saying they're biased for the SEC and the SEC media machine. So when we watch ESPN tomorrow, I'm very curious what the reaction is going to be if Alabama is indeed on the outside looking in at this thing right now It's certainly going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. I'm going to throw up the bracket once again. Projected bracket, not my projected bracket, certainly right now, but it's certainly something that we got to talk about. So here is this online projected bracket that is, or we know Oregon's going to be the number 1 seed. We know the top 4 seeds in this bracket. Those are locked in. We feel like those are locked in, certainly right now, that Clemson would not make the jump, certainly into the top 4 right now. So this bracket, I feel like the top 4, good. That's what the top 4 is going to be right now. And I'm going to get rid of this comment so we can see some other stuff right now. I feel good about 12 being SMU. I feel good about 11 being Clemson. I feel good about 10 being Indiana. I feel good about 9 being Tennessee. I probably even feel good about 8 being Ohio State. I think that it's going to be 5, 6, and 7. Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State. I think that's going to be, there might be a little bit of a discussion going on down there. So I would say right now, Texas would be the 5, and they would play SMU. I would say the 6th seed would be Penn State. So you'd have Clemson going to Happy Valley to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions in the first round of that one over there. And I would have the 7th seed Notre Dame. Notre Dame would play Indiana in an in-state battle in South Bend, Indiana. And if that happens for the Hoosiers, that's not a great matchup. It's not a great matchup. We saw what happened, the interiors, the lines, and how each side of the line of scrimmage looked for Indiana, certainly in that football game, and we know Notre Dame can run the football. Like if that's the kind of mock bracket I'm working with, you look at a possible Notre Dame versus Georgia matchup in the quarterfinals. I think Notre Dame could maybe compete in that football game. We'll see. You'd have Penn State. I think you could see a Penn State Notre Dame semifinal, certainly up there. And then the winner of Ohio State and Oregon, you got to feel really good that the winner of that matchup would go on to the national championship, certainly as well. So this is now the conversation is now pivoting towards this college football playoff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to seeing exactly how this thing goes down. I want to thank everybody for coming in here to the live post-game show. Having a good time right now. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Like all the content, all the social media stuff that everybody likes to say. We're going to be covering here on this channel. I'm going to be covering college football playoff ad nauseum, right? For all 4 of these Big Ten teams, Indiana and Penn State and Ohio State, and of course the Big Ten champion Oregon Ducks, certainly in there as well. The Oregon Ducks winning the Big Ten championship here today in, for my money, the best Big Ten championship game in the history of this great and this sacred event. Brett K chiming in. The Big Ten won last year. They're going to do it again. Let's look at this. Let's talk about this for a minute. Thank you, Brett, for the comment. Because I kind of said it before. If you're just joining in, I'll say it again. Who's the biggest threat? Who's the biggest threat for Big Ten teams when it comes to a national championship? I think it's Georgia, I think it's Texas, and I think it's Notre Dame. But I look at all of those teams, and I think all 3 of those teams, Texas, I don't know. There's some flaws that exist with the Texas Longhorns as well, but they're good. I think out of all three of those teams, I think Texas is probably, from a well-rounded standpoint, Texas is maybe the biggest challenge. Certainly right now, but if I match up Ohio State against Texas on a neutral field, if I match Oregon against Texas, maybe Penn State against Texas, but certainly those first two, if the Ducks and the Bucks can play their best game on a neutral field, I take the Bucks and the Ducks every time against the Texas Longhorns. I do. Now, Ohio State and Oregon kind of playing on the same side of the bracket, it's looking like right now. And, of course, it's all up for Ohio State. You got to get refocused, man. Ryan Day has got to get these kids refocused and on the same wavelength because, man, you don't want to have that Michigan game beat you twice. The Ocean Man 1984 chimes in and says, Nittany Lions played both the Buckeyes and the Ducks very well. I predict they will win their first playoff game. I threw up the bracket up there before, and I think it's going to be Penn State as the number 6 seed. I think they're going to be playing Clemson, the ACC champion, in the first round. Hey, I'm not going to lie. I'm not ACC Allen. I got to throw on some Clemson games. I got to figure out what they do well, what they don't do well, but from my limited knowledge, I guess right now, of the Clemson Tigers, and hey, Happy Valley in December? Forget about it, as they say in the Northeast. Forget about it. I feel good about the Penn State Nittany Lions in that particular situation, certainly as well. Ryan saying SEC is going to demand Alabama. Like, this is going to be the fallout. If SMU does not get into the SMU could be last year's Florida State. I'm not saying they're completely equal, but they're ish in the ballpark, right? Boy, if they don't get in, hey, what's the point of playing a conference championship game if we get punted when other teams don't play on this particular weekend? I wish more teams played so we could have more equal data points, but we're at what we're at, I think, right now. Appreciate everybody for chiming in. A lot of Duck fans. You Duck fans have been awesome this year. You guys have been great. Really appreciate all the nice things that you guys have said, and it's been really fun. It's been really fun covering the Oregon Ducks this season. Tony Morgan chiming in. I think he's part of the Sport Chat Familia, if I'm not mistaken. Big Ten Ted saying it all year long. Oregon Ducks 2024 Big Ten Conference Championship. Go look it up. From August. I picked Oregon to lose on October 12th to Ohio State. And then in a rematch, I thought it would be Ohio State and Oregon in a rematch. And then I thought Oregon would win the rematch. So I picked Oregon to win the Big Ten champ, which is the least bold prediction out there. Not a bold prediction, certainly at all, out there as well. But it is what happened. Yeah, we've got Ryan. Ryan's in Indy. I'm sure having a good time after this Oregon Ducks victory in this football game as well. If you're just coming in, you're just joining us as well. I thought both teams played a great game. I thought both the Oregon Ducks and the Penn State Nittany Lions came ready to play, and they played. Oregon certainly did not play their best game defensively, right? They've certainly, over the bye week, they've got some things to work on as we get closer to New Year's Day, the Rose Bowl. That's where the Oregon Ducks are going to be. The Big Ten champion, back in the Rose Bowl. Of course, that being these Ducks. They got to work on that run defense. Now, will they play Penn State? Will they play Notre Dame? I'd have to look at the bracket again, and we'll have to look at the bracket certainly tomorrow to see how it all shakes out. But, if they don't play Penn State, if they don't play Notre Dame, I think they're certainly going to play a little bit better against the run games that aren't as good also as well. Nick chiming in again, 9 yards per rush. That's up on the graphic, 8.9 to be specific. They ran the football really well. I think when you really factor it, when you really start to break this one down, I think Oregon just made a few more plays. I think it really, and I talked about this in my monologue, I'll kind of say it again, is Oregon, that the beginning of the second half where Oregon scored, and I think Penn State had 2 punts on their first 2 possessions in the first half. I think that was a big difference in the game. It felt like Penn State was just always catching. They were always running from behind, and they got close, but Oregon was just always one step ahead in this game. And I thought Penn State needed to come out at the beginning of the second half, and they needed to really put their pedal to the metal. Well, this had been a second half team. And Penn State, then once we got later in the third quarter, once we got to the fourth quarter, Penn State certainly kicked it into gear a little bit more. But here's another thing, I think, for the Nittany line, here's another thing we need to talk about is just Oregon finding ways to win this game. Got to give them all the credit, certainly in the world. Penn State won the line of scrimmage in this game. Eric Johnson coming in with the comment. Penn State did a good job controlling the line of scrimmage. Also, go Ducks. Go Ducks from Eric here. And yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, Penn State certainly did do a better job controlling the line of scrimmage in this game, and I thought they certainly played really well. Credit to the Nittany Lions. But also I think both offensive lines played well in this game. I think both O-lines did what they needed to do to keep the pass rush at bay. Of course, Penn State's offensive line really, what Eric is talking about, really controlled in the run blocking game as well. We got to get to another super chat here from Going for Gold 85. ACC Allen, SEC Steve. I need this alter ego, maybe. An alter ego of those. What do we got? We've got ACC Allen. We've got SEC Steve. We've got Big 12 Brian. I guess it could be Big 12 Ted, too. There's some alliteration, certainly, as well. But, yeah, all kinds of possibilities as well. We're going to miss out. Well, I guess the Pac-12 is reforming with Boise State. What is it? San Diego State. Every school out west that's named State is going to be in that conference. So I guess Pac-12 Pete could find its way as well. The Pac-12 lives again, certainly right now as well. Oregon 45-37 as we have now made it to tomorrow. We have officially made it to Selection Sunday here in the Central Time Zone. Boy, what would it say, I think, about this current state of college football if, say, the winner of Oregon and Ohio State, which could meet in the quarterfinals, I feel really good about that game. That winner could go to the national championship on one side of the bracket. What if Penn State makes a run? Like, what would the narrative be? Like, they lost a big game against Ohio State. They lost a big game against Oregon. What if Penn State sits there as a 6 seed? They're able to win a home game against Clemson, and they play the 3 seed, which would be Boise State. So they beat Clemson, they beat Boise State, and they're into the semifinals. And then maybe they face off against Notre Dame or Georgia. What would be the narrative about Penn State if they can find a way to get to the national championship? Man, the big game of all big games. Don't sleep on a rematch between the Ducks and the Nittany Lions on this right now. Jeff kind of chiming in. Penn State Franklin never finds a way to win. He comes up short in a lot of these football. Like, Penn State is just so close, and you have to think the Nittany Lions, they're going to break through at some point. A lot of these coaches, Ryan Day has kind of been the subject of this lately a lot, where let me see, I'm trying to formulate my thought here, where sometimes it takes people a little bit longer to break through. Dan Lanning, it took him 3 years to break through. Right? I know the losses. I mean, he lost to Oregon State early in his career. Of course, those losses to Washington. But now this year is certainly the breakthrough year. It takes people sometimes a little bit longer than others to get to a certain point as well. We got a question here from Michael. How am I doing tonight? I'm doing great. It's officially Selection Sunday here in the Central Time Zone. And why was it that James Franklin got outcoached by Dan Lanning tonight and wait to run the ball when they should have done it the whole game? I'm not ultra critical, I guess, of what Andy is doing. Look, you ran for almost 300 yards against Oregon. Yeah, could there have been different calls in different situations? Yeah, I mean that's how every game is pretty much going to go, right? But I'm not ultra critical, I guess. I thought Andy schemed up a really good game. I thought Andy called a very good game. This was not like that Ohio State game. Remember that Ohio State game where Tyler Warren ran around the edge for, what was that, 20 or 30 yards, and they get first and goal, and they run the same play once, twice, and then they throw it incomplete, and they didn't get the ball into Warren, they didn't get the ball to Prebula, or any type of, it was very vanilla, which this offense has been the opposite of vanilla all year long. I thought it was called pretty well tonight. I thought Aller, kind of like he's been doing in some of these games this season outside of Ohio State, he stepped up exactly when he needed to step up to be able to make some plays right now. Let's get to some more comments. Got some good comments, certainly, here tonight. Michael just got home from the game 30 minutes ago. I would be very curious to see if anybody's in the stream that was at the game, what the split in the crowd was. I did hear that, hey, maybe there was, because it was closer to Pennsylvania, obviously, and because of the ticket situation, which tickets were going for like $20. Crazy ticket prices in this game because Ohio State and their contingent, of course, sold their tickets kind of later on in this game. So there was a great opportunity for you to kind of swoop in and go to this game if you wanted to. But I'd be very curious if anybody was at the game, what the split was in the crowd over there in Indianapolis as well. Oregon, 45-37. I'm curious what, I'll say this about the Ducks coming into and I'll talk about this a little bit as we get further on down the week. I might talk about this on Monday or Tuesday or pretty soon. So the Big Ten hasn't exactly been the most explosive offensive conference in the world. We all know that. For those of us that are maybe coming from the West Coast and they're coming in, or teams and fans that have been in the Big Ten, we all know that. But what does it say? Oregon coming in year one and having the type of team that they have and then stacking these top 5 recruiting classes. It was just signing day. What does it say about them coming into the conference right away and saying, this is ours? It could be a little bit of a wake-up call for the Big Ten because Oregon shows no signs, zero signs of letting down, certainly right now. Well, I think Bert coming in with a little bit of update. Obviously, I've been here, so I don't have ESPN pulled up. But according to Bert, ESPN has Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Boise State 3, Arizona State 4. They've got Penn State at 5. I'll take it. I said earlier in the show that you'd have Texas at 5, but I'll take Penn State at 5. I'll take Penn State at number 5. I just put them there because they were ranked ahead of Texas was ranked ahead of Penn State, and I didn't think there would be a ton of movement. Texas at 6, Notre Dame at 7. We talked about it before. 5, 6, and 7. I think that's going to be, those could be in a little bit of a different order. But we got Penn State at 5. This is according to ESPN, according to Bert. That's going through a lot of channels right there. But here we are. Ohio State at 8, Tennessee at 9. Agree with that. Indiana at 10. I think it's just 5, 6, and 7. I think that's the discussion that we need to say. Hey, Texas was ranked above Penn State, but does now Penn State go above Texas? Now, here's the thing about Penn State and Texas. You can compare both of them, right? You can compare both of them at this point in time right now because they both played a conference championship game. So there's no saying, hey, well, this team didn't, so we can't move them here. There's none of that. So we got an excited Doug Scott in here today. We got an excited Oregon fan base. First year, Big Ten champions. All the folks out west cheering for that team out west are very excited here for the Oregon Ducks coming in and winning the Big Ten championship. But yeah, as I was just saying, I think it's going to get 5, 6, and 7. I think that's the debate. I think, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think it's fairly set in stone. We know 1, 2, 3, and 4. We feel pretty good, I think. That's pretty set in stone. I kind of feel that right now, certainly as well. I'm going to pull up that comment yet again because this is kind of the only graphic thing that I really have to work with right now. Penn State at 5. They'd have Clemson at number 12. The previous bracket that I had up had Clemson as the number 11 seed, right? So we'll see. Certainly right now. I mean, Clemson just beat SMU. Did Clemson, did that just not happen? I know their records aren't exactly even playing in the same conference, but we just had a head-to-head win for Clemson getting over to SMU. So I think personally Clemson goes to 11 and SMU goes to 12. That's I think where I sit right now with the college football playoff. So what would that, if Penn State is at 5, They would play the 12, which would be SMU in the first round. Texas, or I should say Penn State. Oh boy, I'm getting all mixed up now because I'm going against the grain in what this comment certainly says right now. So we'll see. Yeah, I think SMU is the 12, Clemson's the 11, Indiana's the 10, Tennessee's the 9, Ohio State's the 8. I feel pretty confident. In that right now, but I'm not on the college football committee. In case you didn't know. All right, lot of happy Duck fans. Maybe getting out of the parking lot from Indianapolis. Very curious to see how Oregon fans right now, because it seems fairly locked in that we're going to get Ohio State as the number 8 seed, and we're going to get Tennessee as the number 9 seed. I'd be very curious, Oregon fans, how you feel about it. You've played Ohio State already. And Ohio State, since you've played them, they don't have Seth McLaughlin anymore at center. It's Carson Hinsman. They've moved Donovan Jackson out to left tackle. How do Oregon fans feel about those matchups? Once again, I'm not SEC Steve, but here's the limited knowledge I know about the Tennessee Volunteers. Good defense. Nico maybe hasn't gotten to that super high level that they expected him to, although they've had good games on the offensive side of the football. Once again, I got to put research into Clemson. I got to put research into Tennessee. When you're so hyper-focused on the Big Ten like I am, I mean, you're watching Northwestern and Maryland and not Tennessee versus Alabama. Okay? So there you go. But yeah, I'd be very curious. I think in a Rose Bowl setting, right? Because that's where the quarterfinal would be right now for the Oregon Ducks. In a Rose Bowl type of setting, I feel right now very good about Oregon matching up against Ohio State. I think the biggest thing for Ohio State right now is between the ears. Where are they mentally after losing to Michigan for a 4th straight year? Because for those of you that don't know, that's a big rivalry. And those things can live in your head. Whether you agree with this or whether you don't, some people nationally have said Ohio State, Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, whoever, they were so hell-bent on being the tougher team, because that's what that game has come down to for so many years, that they just kept running it. Now there were other theories about Will Howard, and he got banged up and all that, certainly, all that stuff as well. All right, let's get to some more comments here. This was brought up during the broadcast. We got a guy, Doug, chiming in. It's like, hey, you know what? We're number 1. Oregon's the number 1 team in the country. Bring it on, baby. Bring it on, baby. Bring me your best. We got some late night wooing here. If you want to be the man, you got to beat the man, as the nature boy Ric Flair once said. And I think based on what I've heard from Dan Lanning and this Oregon team, I've watched every Ducks versus them. I've watched a lot of press conferences lately of what Dan does. Dan and this team just seem so dialed in right now, and they don't care. And I think there's a lot of confidence in this football team right now on what the Ducks can do. What is another thing that's worth bringing up, I think, right now? Oregon's played very good. They've made key plays in close games this year. Look at I know Wisconsin, that was the end of an 8-game stretch. They were pretty tired and beat up maybe at that point in time, but you look at what Oregon was able to do. You look at what Oregon was able to do in that game. You look at what they did against Ohio State. You look at what they did in this game against Penn State, certainly making plays down the stretch. This is a team that can finish in close games. And you look at, the last handful of meetings prior to this year's beatdown in Washington. Look at how Oregon maybe played in some of those closer games, right? Those 3-point games to the Washington Huskies. They weren't able to get over the hump. Now they're winning some of these really close competitive games. They're making those couple of key plays when some of these other teams, like the Ohio States of the world and the Penn States of the world, aren't. If you're just joining us, I talked about this at the top of the show, and I think it's worth bringing up. Historical bullet point for this Oregon Ducks program. They are the first team since the 2015 Michigan State Spartans to beat Ohio State, to beat Michigan, to beat Penn State in the same season. Those three teams ran the Big Ten East. The Big Ten East from 2014 to 2023, 10-year existence. And we know it was a very, how do I put this nicely? It was an imbalance in divisions in the Big Ten for 10 years in the East-West era. And you look at the other teams in the East, you had Indiana, not the Indiana that there is now, Maryland and Rutgers in there as well. And I'm missing one. Oh, Michigan State, right, of course, was the team that did it in 2015 under Mark D'Antonio that specific year. So, look, it's not the best competition in the East. Like, those are the teams that are playing Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan on a yearly basis, or they did for that 10-year period. But for Oregon, Oregon is they're just casually walking in here. So, yeah, doesn't matter. Here's the thing about the Ducks. And look, I'll say this calmly. I will attempt to say it calmly. There's so much talk about physicality in the Big Ten. Okay, physicality in the Big Ten coming in, and they mentioned that on the broadcast a few times on the CBS broadcast. By the way, I want to make sure I say this. I didn't say this at the top of the show. This will not be in what I post later on today, since it is already tomorrow. CBS, fantastic job on the broadcast. Absolutely fantastic use of the technology. I work in television, so I noticed the little things. It was a great broadcast. This Big Ten championship game felt like it just felt so huge. Maybe it's because of CBS, and CBS did the SEC game, and those felt huge all those years. But this title game, and you had these West Division winners, the Iowas and the Purdues as of late, and it just didn't feel like after the Michigan-Ohio State game had basically been the Big Ten championship game for the last handful of seasons. Maybe bigger than a handful, maybe a couple of handfuls, maybe three handfuls. But this game and considering the quality of the game as well, this game just felt as big as I've ever seen the Big Ten championship. There were some games in the Leaders and Legends era from 2011, 2012, 2013 that went back and for the first game in 2011 when Wisconsin beat Michigan State, that went back and forth. That was the Russell Wilson year for the Badgers. But this game just felt huge. It felt like a big-time atmosphere. And from my chair and where I sit covering the conference, and this is supposed to be the showcase and the spotlight of the league. And this year, for the first time, probably since that 2015 game between Iowa and Michigan State, where the winner went to the college football playoff, number 4 against number 5, this is the first time since that time where this game felt like the biggest thing. Otherwise, it was a lot of these, Wisconsin won the West a few times, got run off the field 59-0 against Ohio State one year, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I certainly said that as well. Brickhead Brad, that's a hell of a username. Love it. Oregon is not unbeatable, but I'm not scared of anyone. That kind of comes back to the points that I made before. Who are the biggest threats, not only to Oregon, but to other Big Ten teams like an Ohio State, a Penn State? Look, I love the story that's Indiana. The Hoosier fans have been great this year. We've seen the audience that is Indiana football come into the Big Ten TED viewership this year, which I greatly appreciate. But here's the thing about Indiana. I think they're going to struggle up front against like Notre Dame is a possibility they could play. Penn State is a possibility they could play. There's a lot of teams at the Texas. Like a lot of those teams have good interiors. But Indiana does a lot of other things well. Quarterback play is really good. They're explosive, all those sorts of things. But, we'll see. I could be wrong, and Kurt could have those boys ready to play. But I'm not sure. But you look at Oregon, are they unbeatable? I trust Oregon a lot in these close games. I really do. That's the thing. I trust an experienced quarterback like Dylan Gabriel. I trust Dan Lanning to be able to make the right calls in the right situations, fourth down calls or whatever it is. Like that's, I think, one thing we've seen from Oregon this year is Dan Lanning We just talked about how great of a recruiter he was a couple of days ago, but his in-game coaching, I think, has been really, really good as well this season. Just, you talk about what the 12-man thing against Ohio State. He took late in the game. I'm trying to remember the situation. I think it was when they had 12 men on the field or something. I don't know. He took a timeout in a good situation. He was very aware of what was going on. Let's. Maybe I shouldn't proclaim this yet. Maybe that would be irresponsible of me. But Dan Lanning is certainly establishing himself atop the coaching ranks right now in college football. Let's see. Hopefully the Ducks will get the recognition they deserve for years. I mean, what a world it would be. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this Ducks team and all the stuff they can do well. Yeah, we know about the defense and we know what happened today. I've said that ad nauseum during this show. But if Oregon wins the Big Ten, they win the national championship. They're just coming off back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes. Like this is there's a couple of comments in here that mention Oregon is the Death Star, and they are. They're the Death Star of the Big Ten. This is maybe the punch in the face that the Big Ten needs to be able to step up. I talked about physicality. And I kind of cut myself off because it's a live stream and anything can happen. I talked about physical. Oregon at the beginning of the year, you look at their offensive line and their defensive line. At the beginning of the year, this was not a team that was going to struggle with Big Ten physicality. And we saw it at points during this game, and we saw it a lot during the season. Oregon's a physical football team, man. They lined up with Tatum Tuioti at fullback. I love it. I made sure I tweeted that out. I'm like, hey, that's Big Ten football, baby. You put 44 at fullback. Oregon lines up in an I formation. Tuioti kicks out a linebacker. And I think it was Jordan James that went in for a touchdown. That was a beauty to see. I loved every minute of that. But we know that this is a physical team. I knew that this was a physical team in July and August. I didn't know how good their defense would be. I thought that they would be a top 5 defense. Some people laughed at me in the preseason. Go look at the comments. But this is a team that's turned into a physical ball club. Now, look at the graphic. 300 yards rushing. Yeah, I know that's not great. I know that maybe doesn't scream physical, but you got to give a lot of credit to Penn State and what they were able to do. I hope people don't get down on Oregon's defense. They shouldn't get down on Oregon's defense. I thought Penn State came ready to play. I thought Andy Kotelnicki, a guy that's been in the rumor will, maybe taking an interview with West Virginia and they're opening right now. I thought he was focused. I thought this whole team was focused and certainly ready to play. Whew, now I'm pumped. Now you got me all worked up. And talking about what's happening right now. But this is an Oregon team. Doug said it in a comment before. Hey, you just got to play what's in front of you. The matchups are going to be what the matchups are going to be. Is the format great? No, it's not great. And here's the thing I'll say about the format. Remember, we had a 6+6 format going when we still had the Pac-12, when we still had Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. And I think that's kind of the problem right now that exists, because this playoff with the 4 conference champions, right, with getting buys, it was designed when you had Oregon in the Pac-12. It was designed, I think, when you had Texas in the Big 12, where maybe some of these bigger brands were spaced over more conferences. Now you have the Big 12 that's, let's call it as it is, the definition of mid. There's a lot of middle-tier teams in that league. Good job, Kenny Dillingham. Good job, Arizona State. Make sure I want to say that. They've been a great story this year. Former Big Ten quarterback, Sam Leavitt, last year, he was kind of in a quarterback trio with Noah Kim and Caton Hauser over there at Michigan State. He's looked really well. Kenny's done a really good job with him this year. But I think this playoff was designed for a world of college football that doesn't exist anymore. And they can't really change it until 2026. I've got ideas on how they can change it, but we'll get to that in another day. We'll certainly get to that a little bit later. Take a deep breath and relax. It's playoff time. We got to be ready to go. We got to be hyped up. We got to be ready to go. Oh, man. Here's the thing. Like, Oregon has been so close so many years to be able to win a national championship. I think for them to get over the hump, like, Oregon is already a Death Star. They're already a machine. But if they climb that elusive hill, that could really take this thing to the next level. As well. Rue says, we got mountains, beaches, huge trees, natural beauties, Nike, and football. How could you not want to play at Oregon? How could you not want to play for the Oregon Ducks? Man, it's as good as it gets out there. I know that because I've been doing research at a possible trip there this summer. So, all right, well, here we go. Oregon getting the 45-37 win over the Penn State Nittany Lions here today. I think that'll be it. I think we're going to wrap it up here because I gotta post the video from the monologue from the beginning. I want to thank everybody. I haven't done a live stream in absolute ages. So hopefully this one was fine, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. So here's what's the deal. We got the playoff coming tomorrow. We got the playoff selection show coming tomorrow. We're going to be on a recorded video. It could be a live stream. We don't know what we're going to do yet. But there will be content breaking down the first round matchups. And, of course, that bye for the Oregon Ducks, doing all of that and talking about all of that as it pertains to these matchups. So there's going to be 3 first round matchups for the Big Ten here as we continue to go along. Once again, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, I invite you to do so. Leave in the comments or the live chat, because I think I have live chat replay on this, if you enjoy a live stream. I took a break from doing live streams for like almost a year, right? So if you enjoy this, hey, let me know, and maybe we can make this a regular thing. But Oregon winning the Big Ten title, 45-37. They are 13-0. They are 3 wins away from their first ever national championship. And for you Nittany Lion fans, you're in a good spot too. You're looking pretty good, certainly, as well. So, until we see each other again, I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching and listening to Big Nation. Make sure to subscribe and follow Big Ten Ted on X, YouTube, and podcast platforms to stay in the know on all things Big Ten football.